I do think Usyk will take that fight next. We're looking at the end of June for that fight, and that's when the fight's got to take place by. And if he's not ready, we'll push for an interim fight. But my gut feeling right now, and this could change, is that you will be seeing Anthony Joshua against Alexander Usyk for the Unified World Heavyweight Championships next.
Happy Monday, fight fans. This is the Zone Boxing Show. I go by the name of Ak.
And I'm Barack the Boxing Bully.
Nice of you to join us. It's Monday, so you know Mr. Matchroom. Eddie Hearn will be on with us today. We also have a special edition of Jabs at Maddox and Mora out on the West Coast in LA. But we have to talk about the welterweight that did a lot of talking, but not a lot of walking on Saturday night. It's the opening bell. The Zone's main event on Saturday between Alexis Rocha and Blair Cobbs is in the books. While Blair and Flair talked the talk leading up to the bout, Alexis Rocha did the walking with a brutal TKO in the 9th round. Now, Barack, you know Rocha has a loss against very talented Rashidi Ellis. But is he amongst those, not elite, but right underneath those elite welterweights? Where do you rank this win? Where do you rank him as a welterweight? And should he be fighting for a title later this year?
No, elite welterweights. The only guys who have proved themselves yet are the top 3 guys, Spence, Crawford, and Ugas. You know, but I'm talking about maybe, let's say, top 10. I don't think he's in there yet neither. You know, not by beating
Blair to Flair.
Not by beating Blair. Because there's guys who are like on the cusp right there who's been around for a while, like Josecito Lopez. You got Kavalaskis. All of these tough guys, you got to get guys like them. And right there at the bottom of that list is Conor Benn. If you want to enter that list, you got to get past Conor Benn. And he's the guy that's on the cusp of one more fight and then maybe a championship fight, or at least 2 fights away. You know, at the most, rather, 2 fights away. So I wouldn't put Rocha there. I just think that this is a very good win. But I do want to say, and congratulations to Rocha, but I do want to say maybe I thought, you know, with your intro, you was a little too harsh on Blair because, yes, he talks a lot, and those people who talk a lot, they get the most ridicule. You know, we saw with Chris Colbert, we see with Adrian Broner and guys like that. But I think he did his best in there, and I think he went out like a warrior. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't experienced enough, still tried his best. He didn't get in there and give up. He definitely gave it his all. Now, when I think back to before the fight, you know, you figure Blair, he does have a lot of flair, so he's excited inside the ring, but he's also, he tries his best to be excited outside the ring with his personality. So you figured that he'd be the main guy. Because when we lost the main event, we were like, okay, so now Blair to Flair is the main event, and that's how we spoke, you know, because of his personality. In reality, look how they put the bill. Golden Boy put Alexis Rocha versus Blair to Flair. So they put him first as he's the guy, you know. And when I think about it, I remember speaking to Oscar last week, and he was like, you know, it was Alexis that has the most experience. And that's how they were looking at this. So maybe they kind of knew that this is a tougher fight for Blair because Alexis has been in there with better fighters, and maybe they even thought he was a better fighter.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that a guy, you know, isn't going to lose when experienced. There's some guys that, you know, lacking experience but are super talented. Unfortunately for Blair Cobbs, he doesn't have an amateur background, doesn't have a lot of experience, an amazing story. And I agree with you, Barack. You know, yes, for the sake of the intro, you know, we wanted to just set the tone because Blair does do a lot of talking, but it doesn't mean that he isn't tough and didn't go in there to win. He tried his best. In fact, I do believe that the referee might have stopped that fight a little prematurely.
No.
It was because, that's my opinion.
All right,
because
say why.
Blair the Flair has a big afro, a big loose afro. So a lot of those shots look really dramatic.
What's a loose afro, though?
Meaning it's not too tight. It's really loose. Hairs are loose, a little too curly. So it looks really dramatic when he gets hit because it flares up in the air, his hair, no pun intended. So he's it didn't seem like a brutal onslaught of punches. But it can, listen, he didn't complain. Nobody complained in the arena. I don't think Blair was successful in the fight in order for people to really react to it. So, nevertheless, all credit to Rocha. I think that Blair needs a lot of work as far as where he goes from here, Barack. I'm not sure. Can he compete with those elite welterweights? No. The Boots Ennis, the Errol Spencers, the guys that he's been calling out? No. So he has to do some soul searching and some real serious training to even compete at a C class, B class level.
All right, well, I definitely disagree with you with the referee. I think he stopped it at the exact right time. And I also feel like, when you talk this much, when you talked about Ugas saying that he's no good and he's going to get beat up and you beat him up in spar and this happens, and of course, what comes with being a talker are the people that are going to respond to all the talking you did prior if you don't back up what you talked. And rightfully so, because he said things about Crawford, who never ever mentioned Blair's name, and he said things about Spence, and he could have asked the question. He could have said it like, hey, you know what? I don't know if Spence has the spirit anymore, but he said blatantly he don't have it anymore. So you expect the ridicule, and it happened. Twitter. Look at what Spence had to say, and look at what Bud has to say. You guys could read that for yourself. That's not the language I speak on the show or even off the show, but he opened himself for ridicule like this. When you come at other fighters, especially other fighters who are actually doing their due diligence and they're undefeated and they've already proven themselves, this is what's going to come back. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a hard road back, especially when you've talked this much. But I do feel like I think the disconnect between our opinions is that I was watching it on TV. And you was watching it there live. Oh, we weren't even live, so I don't even know why you didn't see what I saw. What I saw was right when the referee jumped in and broke it up. I don't know if you noticed.
Blair was still throwing punches.
Blair was still punching, and he hit the referee about 4 times.
Yeah, it was.
In other words, he was delirious. He was out on his feet. He didn't know what was going on. If you don't know who you're punching, you don't need to be fighting anymore. I think that was a perfect stoppage.
Yeah, he tapped him a couple of times with his head down.
Who does that, though? That's what I'm saying. Somebody that's out.
All right, listen, but meanwhile, over at the world's most famous arena, Edgar Berlanga outboxed Steve Rose to unanimous decision to keep his undefeated record intact. Now, Berlanga wasn't an easy night for him at all. Steve Rose, very experienced boxer, had a lot of success in that fight. And I'll be frank here, Edgar has a reputation of being a knockout puncher. And I think sometimes fighters that can box make the mistake of relying on that power and relying on one shot, meaning just loading up to land that one big punch. And oftentimes what they should do is let that knockout come. You know how boxers always say that, Barack? They say, no, I don't go for a knockout, I let it come. They don't do that enough, meaning you have to let the jab go. I think for Edgar's sake, the reason why he didn't land that big punch was distance. That was the key. He wasn't at the proper distance. And the way you get to a proper distance is by touching your opponent with a jab, sometimes touching them with soft shots, not always loading for that big shot. So Steve Rose was able to sometimes be too close, be too far, not enough time, not a good distance for Edgar to land those big shots, which is why he didn't score a knockout or knock down throughout that fight. The distance wasn't there. He didn't let his jab go enough. He was loading up on one shot, but he had success, enough success to pull out the victory. The question is, with that performance, will he be able to compete with other elite super middleweights, Barack?
Yeah, I think judging distance is one of the most important things and skill sets in this sport. It's the same thing with Blair Cobbs. He did a lot of feintings in the wrong distance, and he just got touched all the time. You got the taller guy, longer guy, and you're getting touched with a jab, and the same problem happened with Edgar Berlanga. And I saw a couple of things that reminded me of Deontay Wilder. I remember Deontay Wilder winning the strap in 2015 from Stavern with boxing skill, literally boxing on the back foot. And then for years, people say, oh, Deontay Wilder can't box on the back foot, which was not true. He just wasn't doing it. And then I guess from not doing it so much and relying on one punch power, in the midst of it, you kind of forget, you know, and maybe that's the issue with Edgar Berlanga. But I also saw something that reminded me of Wilder. Now, the first fight Wilder had with Fury, Wilder was a little gun shy because he had an injury. He had broke his arm before that fight. You know, I remember he called me 11 weeks out. I was like, just tell me it's not the right hand. And he was like, it's the right hand. You know, so that made him a little gun shy. Maybe that was the issue with Edgar Berlanga. Definitely not taking anything away from Steve Rose, because we seen what Steve Rose could do against Triple G. Now, Triple G is also another person who's known for knockouts. He had like 20-something consecutive knockouts, you know, before he fought Daniel Jacobs. Set those knockouts up, you know what I mean? With the jab, with feigning, you know, and that's something that Edgar didn't do. I think it's just a learning curve. He's just gonna have to get back in that gym and start relying on the basics in order to show that he has that power that we've seen, 16-0, 16 first-round knockouts.
Yeah, no question about it, because what happens is you let the rounds go, and sometimes you lose rounds by waiting on that one shot. Your hands had to move in, and you mentioned feints. That's something that Edgar didn't do in that fight, because when a guy throws jabs like Steve Rose and it's busy, you gotta make him make mistakes. You do that by setting feints, setting traps. So, you know, so you can land those big shots. But I agree, it's a learning curve. He got the victory. Back to the drawing board. He's a humble young man and understands if he, you know, when he doesn't perform well, he wants to get better. So hopefully he gets better, and we'll see him again.
He seemed a little flat. You know what the problem is with him, and not so much probably other young fighters around his age, you know, is that he demands a certain crowd. Yeah. You know, and the crowd that he attracts, he got some A-listers at his fight, you know what I mean? Or DMing him or putting up videos with him, you know, so the kind of crowd that he attracts, they only speak knockout language. Mm-hmm. That kind of crowd only speaks knockout language. So
puts a lot of pressure on him sometimes.
Yes, and it's kind of hard to see a fight and to see the sweet science, you know, when you're talking about casuals who are there for the event. An event needs to end in a knockout, and that pressure right there can bring him out of that boxing zone.
Yeah, Barack, I think we'll see a better performance from Edgar Berlanga next time he got the victory, which is very important. Once he watches that tape, I think he'll start implementing what he needs to do more often. And more on that story and all things boxing, make sure you go to Dazn News. They have you covered. All right, let's talk to Mr. Matchroom himself, Mr. Eddie Hearn. All right, fight fans, we got our guy here, as we do every week, most weeks. Sometimes he's too busy around the world, you know, trying to make fights happen. Mr. Eddie Hearn. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Morning, Ak. How you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thanks for joining us as always. Listen, Eddie, I want to jump into a lot of these images we've seen online over the weekend. First one that stood out, it's a video of you and Dana White chopping it up ear to ear, and everybody's going crazy. What the hell Eddie and Dana are talking about? Can you elaborate? I
was disappointed because the production manager for the UFC came over and said, look, we're going to put you on the big screen, like in between a fight with some other people in the crowd. And I was like, yeah. But I didn't realize when they actually put the camera on me, I was just in Dana White's ear. I wanted to give it the big thumbs up, you know, to the crowd and to the audience. So
like the big celebrities.
It was like 6 o'clock on Saturday and said, look, are you coming to the show? I know what it's like, people asking for tickets. So I'd rather just sort of not be that guy. And he said, look, you got to come. So I came, and he put me right next to him on the table next to the octagon. It was my first UFC event. Wow. Actually, I went to one, I think it was Carwin against Lesnar in 2013 or something. But it was amazing. It was amazing to watch everything up close. It was amazing to see the UFC's production in full flow. And it was amazing to learn about the sport. And he was extremely hospitable. AJ was there, Chisora was there, some other people, and it was a great energy. It's a great brand, it's a great event, and it was quite, like I said, it was actually quite interesting to learn about the sport and see it up close, because I think as a fight fan, people have got their perception, and probably vice versa as well. But actually, there's a lot more skill to it, obviously, than maybe a fight fan might think, or certainly I would think, and I found it quite fascinating.
So there was no negotiation between you and Dana White. You guys wasn't talking business, just small talk.
It was more about, there was a huge amount of Brits on the card, and he was sort of saying, look, it's unbelievable. All these Brits are winning.
Right.
Normally we come to the UK once a year, but we might have to come back in the summer. And I was talking to him about some stadiums that are here. Obviously, you had 2 Scousers on the card there. We were talking a little bit about Anfield. Mm-hmm. He was sort of educating me about the fighters, and also during the fight, he'd say, look, see the hold he's got on there. He can't breathe. And it was amazing. It was a great experience, and it was, you can never be too naive to think that you can't watch and learn. Right. I don't mind. My ego can sometimes get a little bit out of control, but he's a legendary promoter, Dana White. So Listen, it was amazing to watch that whole machine in flow.
Yeah, no, it's a huge company. Now, you mentioned AJ and Chisora. Another thing that I noticed that stood out was pictures of you guys, but there was one image of you, Chisora. I think AJ was in the picture, but Frazier Clark, and obviously you posted a picture and you cut him completely out. Now, Eddie, I've done this plenty of times for people, but what was the reason that you cut Frazier out?
The reason is because the photo was quite a long way away.
Right.
And I looked good in the photo. I thought to myself, I looked too good to be that far away. So I'm going to have to zoom in on Instagram. Now, we had to have a casualty hack.
It happens.
We had to lose a man for the zoom in, for the glow up.
No doubt.
Unfortunately, man down was Frazier Clark. No disrespect to Frazier. We don't promote him. He's only had 1 fight. I was thinking, we've got to chop one. There's only 2 to chop off the end. It's AJ or it's Frazier.
He's a sacrificial lamb.
I'm sorry, but he actually put quite a funny one up, a picture of his promoter on this one. But I love Frazier.
I saw that. But listen, actually, I did like the jacket you had on. I thought you did look spliff. I like that whole look. Now, as far as AJ, did you and AJ chop it up about, hey, maybe a crossover fight one day? You in that cage.
That was more Chisora. Chisora was get me in there with Ngannou. I said to the guys, look, we all know that the truth is that fighters get paid more money than MMA stars, right? We all know that. And one thing I would say, and I'm not just standing up for Dana White, is I was joking to the guys like Chisora and AJ that, have you noticed that every MMA fighter that wins jumps out of the cage, runs straight round to Dana White and gives him a cuddle? Yeah. Guys, I'll get in the ring, you don't even want to come near me. So they're obviously doing something right. The fighters are happy, and they feel like they're being treated well. So that's one thing. But I also said to the fighters, this is tough. This is tough. This is brutal.
I don't know if all the fighters are happy, by the way, though.
But I'm sure. Listen, if you ask 100% of boxers, are you happy with your pay and what you're getting? I'm sure 99% of them would say no anyway. But what I'm telling you is the environment appears to be full of happy fighters. Of course, there's fighters who think they should be getting paid more money. But what I did notice was this is brutal. And I said to AJ and Chisora, I think we better stick to the boxing. Right. Because this is tough. But Chisora's definitely up for a little go with Ngannou, and I think AJ would be as well. But there's I got asked some questions last week about Usman, and Dana come out and said, look, that's ridiculous. And he's right. It's a complete mismatch. And I think a boxer against someone who can take you down, can suffocate you, can break your arm, can do this. Obviously, that's a disadvantage as well. So, but at some point, a match could come together. And I think it's a heavyweight fight. I think, and Ngannou can box, and actually Chisora can grapple. Dillian White can definitely grapple. So I don't know. I think in the right situation, it could be huge. But we would only do that with Dana's permission and his willingness. And I don't think he needs to do that. Why would he want to see one of his biggest stars get beaten in any discipline? It doesn't really make sense.
Because it translates to a lot of money. Listen, there's no secret that McGregor Floyd showed us that. We all knew that was a mismatch. The whole world knew it. I mean, I spoke to Usman last week, and he's very confident about a fight with Canelo, but obviously delusional. But I think it's more so about what they can gain from it, and it's a lot of money. But I want to shift gears real quick. This weekend I was over at MSG, and I ran into a guy by the name of Peter Kahn. okay? And obviously, you know, I was digging and like, hey, what's up? Are we getting Devin Haney, Kambosos? Is Lomachenko out of the picture? I need to know this off the record. I couldn't get much out of him, Eddie, but he did kind of give me a nudge like, you know, yeah, Devin is in the running. So I need to know from your end, is there any progress? Devin Haney, Kambosos.
One day I'm confident, one day I'm not. And I don't really understand what is going on in the thought process of Team Kambosos right now. Like, you've got a guy in Devin Haney that solves the whole undisputed problem, that has already come out and said, we're ready to take the fight at the same price as Lomachenko. Dazn have made a fantastic offer to make this fight happen. I actually don't know what we're waiting for. Like, unless Team Kambosos actually don't want to fight Haney and they want to fight Lomachenko instead, which, you know, on paper, you'd have to say they're both difficult fights. Lomachenko may be the trickier fight, may be the more difficult fight, I don't know, but it's weird. So I'm hoping that Peter Khan and Jim Kambosos and Lou DiBello, we could just move forward. Like, they seem to be trying to take the hard route, like not the hard route in terms of the fight, but obviously there's a lot of hoops to go through. We're ready to go. Dazn have made a fantastic offer to do this fight, and that fight's ready to go. Devin's waiting, and we're running out of time because, you know, I don't know who's going to be staging the show, but if you want to go June 4th, to put a stadium fight on internationally and a fight of that magnitude, you need the right amount of build-up. You need the right amount of time logistically and promotionally to make it a success. We could have done this deal 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. So maybe they just don't want to fight Devin Haney. I don't know, but sometimes you wonder what a fighter's being told. Like, every now and again you see Kambosos, like I think he put out a Pinocchio thing the other day, and like Devin and him are going backwards and forwards. I don't want to speak to George Kambosos because I don't want to cross over any contracts and, you know, upset anyone. But the reality is he should, I hope he knows what's on the table, because this deal should have been done.
I want to speak to George. I want to actually speak to George and Devin at the same damn time on the show, because I'm sick of all of this. I will. Now, as far as I want to shift gears to another fighter that you kind of involved with, and that was Triple G. Years ago when Triple G came over to DAZN, I know Matchroom was connected to him somehow, and he's kind of drifted away from everybody. I don't know what's going on with Triple G, but obviously there's recent news about him suing Golden Boy and so on and so forth. Can this affect the potential trilogy between him and Canelo under the Matchroom and DAZN banner, should he get past Bivol?
I mean, that's obviously a separate issue, previous issue. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I've seen that he's suing Golden Boy for money owed, or his belief that money is owed. So, no, that has no effect on the Canelo fight. We're really still in the same boat. Obviously, Canelo against Bivol, May the 7th. Canelo has to win. Triple G against Murata, April 9th. He has to win. If both fighters win that fight, you will see the trilogy in September. And we've all got our fingers crossed, obviously, for that, because it's spicing up nicely. You know, a couple of little interviews. It's like, you know, I don't want to talk about that guy because I'm focused on my upcoming fight. But just to let you know, I don't like him. So the build-up will be great, but they've both got two tough fights first, and they've got to come through.
No question about it. Now, speaking of May 7th, the Canelo Alvarez versus Bivol, which you guys don't want to miss on DAZN. Forgive me if I don't know this. Have the tickets gone on sale? If not, when will they be on sale?
Yeah, Tuesday. So tomorrow is pre-sale. Okay. For that, and then Wednesday is general sale. So obviously, as we know, Canelo and Cinco de Mayo weekend are going to be like hotcakes, and we're going to really put on a huge show on the night and the whole week there. It's our first ever real headline, sole promotion in Vegas with Canelo Alvarez, Cinco de Mayo weekend. So we got to go to town, give everyone a weekend they'll never forget.
No, and you know how to do that. Now, you mentioned show. When you talk about show, we talk about not only the main event. So what are the plans for the co-main and some of the other feature bouts before Canelo?
Well, they're going to get announced, I think, maybe even later today or tomorrow. We're looking Montana Love back in action in a big fight against a Mexican opponent who's on a good run at the moment. And we're looking also to stage the big final eliminator for the heavyweight world title, Hrgovic against Dazn, on that card as well. Want to add maybe another world championship fight to the card, and looking to finalise that over the next sort of 24, 48 hours.
Apparently you spoke to someone and mentioned that AJ's next fight will definitely beat Usyk, and there would be no interim fight. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario. You know, obviously we had those conversations about a week ago, and I had my doubts whether Usyk would be ready. I believe now that there's been some kind of conversations with Usyk and even Lomachenko as well, with even the government, to say, look, how do we sit in terms of competing in major sporting events? And I don't think Usyk's going to want to wait, because I just think once you start waiting, like, anything can happen. So we actually had some talks this morning. I do think Usyk will take that fight next. We're looking at the end of June for that fight, and that's when the fight's got to take place by. And if he's not ready, we'll push for an interim fight. But my gut feeling right now, and this could change, is that you will be seeing Anthony Joshua against Alexander Usyk for the Unified World Heavyweight Championships next.
Also, is there truth to an offer made to Al Heyman and the PBC for Chisora Andy Ruiz fight?
Yes, there is. I made an offer last week to the PBC for Andy Ruiz to fight Derek Chisora in London. They wanted more money, which is kind of expected, and I'm going to offer them more money this week. I think it's a brilliant fight, and I think it's very difficult to find the right fights in the heavyweight division. Right. And if I'm PBC, I'm looking at that and saying, yeah, that's a fight they'd be very comfortable to win. I think it's an all-action fight. We tried to make the Areola fight with them. We couldn't get that made, but we're going to try and progress and do what we can to bring Andy Ruiz to London for the Chisora fight.
Eddie, just to go back to the Devin Haney and Kambosos fight one more time, what is the deadline for you and Matchroom and Devin and his father? When do you guys say, okay, this guy doesn't want to fight, we have to move on to the next opponent?
Well, it's not just the deadline for the Devin Haney fight. I think it's the deadline for the George Kambosos fight. Like, if they want to go in June the 4th, I mean, don't forget, George Kambosos boxed in November. So June is already 7 months out of the ring. It's quite a long time. And you start to lose momentum very quickly. So I really feel like by the end of this week, someone's got to make a decision. And obviously, if it means that George Kambosos isn't fighting Devin Haney, we need to move forward and give Devin Haney a date for end of May or first week of June. And, that's what we'll be doing. But again, if you can reach out to Mr. Kambosos and start digging around, it would save me a little bit of work and a few lawsuits as well.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to reach out and be a little co-promoter there, as long as I get some points on that. But really quick, I know you're a supporter of Dazn, so I'm pretty sure you caught the Blair Cobbs Rocha fight this weekend at some point. As a promoter, Eddie, you want your fighters to be braggadocious, to sell a fight, to talk themselves up. Now, Blair Cobbs is no secret that that's what he loves to do, but he didn't deliver. What was your take on his performance, on the fight in general, and what does a promoter say to a Blair Cobbs after that fight?
Listen, I like what Blair Cobbs is doing. He's energetic. He's got a big personality. He'll make people want to tune in. He's just not a world-class welterweight, that's all. But it's okay. Look, not everyone's a world-class at what they do. And there's still a career for you, but you got to go away. You got to lick your wounds. As long as you don't take that sort of that kind of personality and attitude into the gym, as long as you can have a serious conversation with yourself and say, look, the build-up was great, but I underperformed. Now, did you underperform because you underperformed, or did you underperform because you're not good enough? Maybe it's a mixture of both, but that's okay. I mean, I haven't caught the whole fight, but it was a difficult event for Golden Boy, and I think they did really well. I think the main event was good. Michael McKinson, had a tough, awkward fight, but he accepted about 8 opponents, having seen Virgil Ortiz fall through, and it was an exciting main event. And Russia's got a good fan base there in LA. Obviously, with his brother as well, who's going to be fighting Ahmad Aliyev coming up, Rios, and I thought it was a good fight. And Russia can go on and be in some very exciting fights at 147. I'd like to see Russia against Mikkelsen, Russia against Conor Benn.
That's where I was going with next. I mean,
about that fight before with Golden Boy, and that's a big fight.
Eddie, before you get out of here, any Eddie exclusive?
Well, we've kind of gone through them all, really, haven't we?
Yeah.
What can I tell you? I mean, look, I think the exclusive should really be around the big fight this weekend. Josh Warrington trying to become a 2-time world champion against Kiko Martinez.
Hell of a fight.
If Josh Warrington wins that fight, we look to do the big Lee Wood fight, maybe at the City Ground or at Ellen Road. If Kiko wins, you could come back and do Kiko against, I don't know, Michael Conlan in Belfast but I think Navarretti's also looking at this fight very closely at the weekend and saying, I want that fight for the unification. So a big week for us this week, around just under 12,000 in Leeds. Going to be a wild atmosphere for a really big World Championship fight.
Yeah, nobody wants to miss that. Maybe next week we'll get Kambosos, Haney announcement.
Yeah, let's do it.
Usyk, whatever. But listen, as always, Eddie, thanks for taking the time. Cheers. We'll talk soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Let's throw some jabs.
The fight starts now!
All right, Sergio, great performance from Alexis Rocha in this fight. Who do you want to see him face next?
You know, there's so many exciting fights out there, but why not McKinson? Why not McKinson? After what, it was an ugly fight. He just told us that right now, but he gutted it out. Regardless of what I thought, regardless of what the scores thought, he deserves another fight, another payday. And Rocha, we know that he's fan-friendly now. We know that he's able to gut out a performance and be offensive and bounce back, and he made a lot of fans. The fans loved it. I think McKinson deserves another fight, another opportunity against a fighter that he's supposed to face and prepare for, and you know that he won't make it as unappealing as this fight, so I would love to see Rocha McKinson next.
Yeah, I've got my eyes on someone else over in the UK. That's a man that that Alexis Rocha named in the ring, and that is Conor Benn. Conor Benn, one of the hottest prospects over in the UK right now, but I don't think he's been tested by a fighter the skill level of Alexis Rocha, specifically when it comes to power. When you look, Sergio, at some of the fighters that Conor Benn has faced of late, one thing they seem to be lacking is pure power. They're skilled and they're durable at times, but they don't have raw power. Now, Alexis Rocha is not a one-punch knockout artist, but we saw tonight against Blair Cobbs. He is disciplined, he can wear you down, and he says he's ready to travel over to the UK to face Conor Benn. I don't think Conor Benn's team, after watching Alexis Rocha, is going to want any part of that, but I would like to see Rocha against Conor Benn.
Hey, listen, you can't go wrong with that one, because we know that Rocha's willing to go across the pond and fight Conor Benn in his hometown, and we know for damn sure that McKinson's willing to come over here and fight whoever they put him in front of him. You can't go wrong with either fight McKinson or Conor Benn, whichever pays the man more. I just want to see Alexis Rocha fight on the main stage, on the main event again, because we know that he produces.
McKinson, you're not allowed to score it.
I'm not a judge. I'm not a scorer. But look, he took it well. I love the fact where fighters can actually look at the people that critique them and not get upset. They say, look, mate, you said some good things. The scores were awful. That guy was negative. It was hard to look good against. He makes a lot of points. I didn't score it technically. I just didn't think neither of them really won that fight.
I'd like to speak for all my Twitter followers. Your scorecard stinks.
I'm not a scorer. I'm not a judge.
All right, Sergio, all week long, you have been adamant that Bektimir Melikuziev would not be able to get back what he had prior to the loss to Gabriel Rosado. You saw him pick up a second-round knockout on Saturday. Do you still believe that?
Well, we need to see him against a better opponent, better opposition. We're going to see. We saw the first round. He was a little shaky in there. We didn't get to see the body shots until the second round, but then finally when he did land, we saw the bully back. I love the fact that he didn't come out raging and looking for the big shots and being the old bully. He was a careful, refined bully this time, and he still got the outcome. He still got the knockout. But you could see there was a little relief in the corner. You could see it in his trainers as well, but he got that past them. Now it's time to move on.
Look, I have been of the belief all throughout this week that Bektimir Melikuziev absolutely can get back what he lost. Yes, that knockout to Gabe Rosado was savage, and those knockouts are really tough to get over. But this is a guy who's in his mid-20s. He's someone with a deep amateur background. He's got a good training staff behind him, and everything I've seen from him during this week, Sergio, tells me he is over it. Now, you're right. It was a more cautious Beck in that first round, but that body shot is savage. I was watching it with Gabe Rosado, the man that landed that big shot to Bektimir Melikuziev, and Gabe sitting there going, I could feel that. Gabe went down to a similar shot in that first round. When you are that kind of savage body puncher, you're going to be able to win a lot of fights. So I think mentally he's okay. With some minor adjustments, more of a focus on defense, he is going to be at the world championship level once again.
Well, listen, we're not going to find out until he fights better opposition. And we're going to, maybe in his next fight, they're going to throw someone that's actually coming off of winning streak. We're going to see how he's going to react to getting punched back. Wait till Beck starts getting hit and countered with some shots.
What are you most worried about? You're most worried about taking a shot.
Taking a shot. Anyone that gets their chin dented like that in a knockout of the year, you don't forget. You're going to get reminded really quick once you get hit with a big punch. So once he gets hit by a puncher that's on a winning streak, then we're going to see what we have with the Beck the Bully.
Oh, I love watching Beck the Bully. After this fight, he leaned through the ropes, yelled over to Gabe Rosado, like, let's do it again. Let's go. One more time. Gabe Rosado doesn't duck anybody, ever. Let me tell you this. Gabe Rosado does not want another piece of that fight.
You know, it's funny you say that because he came over here. I looked at him. I said, you don't need to fight that guy again. He goes, I know I don't. I'm going to go for someone else, because we know how difficult, how hard Beck the Bully is to look good against. And if you could end it with a knockout like Gabe Rosado just did, hey, man, just put that in the rearview mirror. But if they offer Gabe the money, you know he'll do it.
Well, I love Beck's attitude. I am going to win a world title, and then I'm going to challenge Gabe Rosado to fight me for my title. Guys, we'll throw it back to you.
Thank you guys as always. Okay, Ak, before we get out of here, we know Triple G is getting paid handsomely for the trilogy with Canelo, but it seems like Golovkin feels he's still owed financially for the rematch in September of 2018. Attorneys reportedly filed a lawsuit on Friday on Triple G's behalf against Golden Boy Promotions for not less than $3 million for profits owed mostly for gate receipts and sponsorships.
Well, listen, I don't want to get too deep into the legal issues.
Of course not.
As far as money, I'm thinking more so of down in September when those dudes meet each other, how much animosity is going to be throughout the whole press tour, the press conference, the weigh-in, and the actual fight. Canelo has been open about it being personal to him. You know, Golovkin has thrown his shots on social media about that fight. When these two guys meet again, there's going to be some real tension in the air, and it's going to be a real trilogy match. Exactly. I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully these legal issues get handled. You know, that's on the Golden Boy side. Canelo is no longer with Golden Boy. He's actually going to be fighting on the Matchroom with this fight. So that's different fish that he has to fry. Hopefully we get the fight in September if Canelo obviously gets past Bivol and Triple G gets past Murata. That's what I'm looking forward to. And that's our show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace and love. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow.